The Last of Us is a show based off a hit series game by the same name, that is produced by HBO, that has brought us the likes of The Sopranos, The Wire, and Succession. With this in mind, plus a well-received first season, it seems like a no-brainer that the second season would be just as good despite some scrutiny from fans from the sequel game, right? You are also in the present, so more than likely I don't need to tell you how great this use of sarcasm was to get to an intro. The Last of Us Season 2 is a deeply puzzling season of TV. Puzzling insofar that it's incredible top-notch production and some pretty solid acting with some confounding writing and structuring. I want to get into this because on one hand, some of these choices could help future seasons, but on the other, based off this season of television, there might be quite a few people that are left asking what the heck happened here. In order to do this, I want to take a look at some key differences that were made from the game and the show, and how a lot of positive changes help tertiary characters, while many of the bad changes seem to hinder the main character. Spoilers for the series, as well as some very minor changes from the game, but nothing that will spoil a potential future season. But with that said, let's get into it. Before going into a second season, there are a few key changes made in Season 1 that are interesting setup for some of the issues with the second season. I really enjoyed the first season of the series, and many of the changes don't really affect the series, like spores being removed, zombies being a hive mind, excessive violence being removed. But I draw the line at the fact they changed the outbreak from 2013 to 2003, meaning no Shrek 2, no Sanjaya on American Idol, and no KFC Double Down. What are we doing? But the actual main issue that lingered over into the second season, the Bill and Frank episode, is one a ton of people love, and while I may have gotten overhyped with the best episode of TV ever claims, I can still appreciate the choice to center a minor character from the video game for an entire episode. However, I feel like this is at the detriment of the main relationship when compared to the game. In the game, for the first few hours, it is mostly spent with Joel grumbling about having to get Ellie across the continent, annoyed at her. That changes when the two of you meet up with Frank. Here, Frank is much more disgruntled about Ellie than Joel, to the point you now get perspective on the curmudgeon you've been this whole time. Again, this isn't a bad change, but I don't know if this is one that serves the character of Ellie. If Season 2 were a little different, I probably wouldn't even stick to this point. It is inevitable to make changes from one medium to another. I am aware that you can't have two characters just walking around exploring for hours, but I feel like you have to put something in place of that to get people on board of the main dynamic that is core to the second season. And I don't think they were doing themselves any favors in not having these two together for 3 of the 9 episodes. And I'm saying this as someone who loved Left Behind. However, the main issue I had of not getting much time with Joel and Ellie in the series can't really be a critique with how the second season is structured. And you, a TV watcher, might be questioning what there is to complain about, as the series is pretty close to the story of the game, but there are some interesting changes that I can't help but question the intent of. My hypothesis, and you may completely disagree here, is because of the disconnect gamers had with the character of Abby, the show made a concerted effort to make the audience root for her early on in the series. So when the big drop happens to end the first half of the game, you're so much more ready to accompany Abby on her 3-day adventure in Seattle. The issue, and maybe this crumbles my theory, is that this is completely unsuccessful. Again, there are minor changes that get to this point. 1, you are not given the context of Abby going to Jackson in the game. We don't get her monologue of wanting to find Joel. We don't get her mustache-twirling backstory during the death of Joel explained to the audience. Because of this, everything is much more abrupt and carries way more weight for the moments that pass in Ellie's section of the game. 2, Abby isn't jacked. Without getting into spoilers for why I think this is core to the character, I think her being massive helps make her seem more like a villainous threat. Let's play a game to illustrate this point. Which is scarier? Number 1? Number 2? Number 1, number 2. Number 1, number 2. You get my point, right? The creator of this game says this choice of physicality was only done to differentiate the gameplay between Abby and Ellie. Silly me. This definitely isn't core to this character whatsoever. And lastly, we for sure aren't given Isaac telling us Abby is important in the first half of the game. But boy, do I love when characters tell me a character is important instead of showing me how said character is integral to the story. And if I sound like I'm being unfair, I'm only being critical because the additions in other areas are way more immersing for the series. Jeffrey Wright is so compelling in less than 10 minutes of screen time, but for the handful of non-game players I've talked to, not everyone seems that interested in a third season centering on Abby. I think in part because each of these changes actually don't add to the intrigue. The mystery of Abby both sells the first half and second half of the game, and without that, Ellie's quest gets a little bit weirder. This is the section of the video where Ellie's quest gets a little bit weirder. In order to properly catch non-game players up on why I think the show doesn't really understand what made the game compelling in the first place, here is a brief compare and contrast of many of the changes that are in Ellie's portion of the game for Season 2, some of which I think are good in a vacuum, and we'll get to that. Dina is given more of a relationship with Joel than in the game where there really isn't one. She's there with Joel when he dies instead of in the game where he is with Tommy. In the game, Dina is much more Ellie's yes man, and they added a ton of reasoning for Dina to want to be furious about Joel's death that I think makes her character way more compelling in the show. Because Tommy now has kids, he's not all yeehaw, let's go to Seattle when Joel dies. In theory, this is a grounding choice that adds more to Tommy's character. He's subject to the conflict of revenge and protecting his community and weighing these two things against each other. The siege in Jackson isn't in the game at all. Great spectacle. The show contractually has to show one bloater a season, and they met their quota again. This change also adds to the characters of Jackson getting to defend their community. Jesse is next in line for the leader of Jackson, again adding more depth to his character than just a fun hang that he is in the game. Seth is still homophobic, but in a cool way, I guess. In the game, he's only there to be a bigot, but here, he has as many layers as his cakes he makes. I miss when Seth just does his big homophobia. Seth Keeble's big homophobia, if you will. I have to stop spending time on graphics like this for 4 people. Gail is a completely new character that adds an interesting perspective on both Joel and Ellie in this season. You look at some of these points and see a lot of great choices the series made, and Seth Keeble's big homophobia. And you might be thinking, wait, how are these bad? Well, you're likely not thinking that I haven't mentioned Ellie, right? No, of course they did. What do you think, you have an audience of newborns? Hizzy, come on. So now here's some of those same changes with how they alter some of Ellie's character movements in the game. In the game, the setup for going to Seattle is very straightforward. Tommy yeehaws his way immediately to Seattle. Because of this, Ellie and Dina are sent after him to take him back. Again, this change for Tommy in the show is a good one, but here it makes Ellie seem more defiant and petulant about the needs of fixing the community back up. Again, the destruction of Jackson works for the community, but it complicates Ellie's motives a little bit more. To be clear, I like Ellie's speech. I like this idea of having to sit with quiet rage for 3 months while healing, but I don't think these ideas are fully fleshed out to warrant these changes. Dina did know she was pregnant in the game, which is not the case in the show. Again, it makes way more sense to not have that information and go travel the Pacific Northwest, but I can't help but see this as a disservice to Ellie once again. In the game, because Dina was aware of this, it's seen as way more of a burden to Ellie's revenge mission, to the point of her calling Dina dead weight. In the show, Dina wants to stay in Seattle. She cares about Joel, which helps add to Dina's character, but I'm not sure it helps Ellie fully get caught up in her vengeance to the point of pushing someone she loves away. Jesse in the game, because he's also trying to get Tommy back, is completely cool with Ellie. In the show, there's this really interesting choice to have this combative energy between Jesse and Ellie. Jesse is reasonably furious at Ellie for putting herself and Dina in danger, and because of this change, it makes sense. Again, this is a good change for the character of Jesse, aside from him saying, I am not going to die out here 5 different times. I think they did a great job adding to the character that didn't leave an impression on too many game players. However, what are these changes doing for Ellie? It goes back to that petulance that I don't think is present in the game at all. Because Tommy comes to Seattle to save her, it feels way more out of pocket to not go save him when he's in trouble. And this juxtaposed with community leader Jesse makes it feel much more puzzling. On top of not fully diving into her vengeance, I also think the show does a pretty terrible job at making Ellie seem competent and, more importantly, tenacious. I understand it's a game, and some creators of the show are very smart for depicting realism instead of the John Wick level of action that is the game. but I can't help but feel like they may have done an overcorrection. In this season, we open with Ellie doing some cool martial arts, only for water to be poured on that by the guy saying he was pulling his punches because Joel said something. Ellie gets bit by a stalker in the grocery store, bit in the subway saving Dina, gets the best of maybe 2 people in the Seattle run. Dina and Jesse both kind of imply she's an idiot, and one of the major kills she has in the game is an accident instead of completely intentional, and she basically drowns minutes into operating a boat. I'm fine if they want to stray from the physical toll it would take to mow down hundreds of people in the WLF, but at the same time they have scenes that are verbatim the same that seem to imply there still is a physical toll. The scene with Dina in the game where she's treating her back, you know why she's completely bruised up all over. When this happened in the show, I was confused because when did this happen? I think in making her less capable in action, you are more inclined to feel like Ellie is completely in over her head, which is more realistic, but I don't think it is more compelling for a narrative. On top of the lack of competence for the character, I feel like the TV show muddies the waters on motivation based on its reconstructing of the narrative. Even though they are minor, to me, it seems like they have caused a massive disconnect with our protagonist. These changes are the aforementioned Abby choices and the choice to have an entire episode of Joel flashbacks instead of sprinkled throughout the story. In the game, the scenes are different, but they have a similar intent. But instead of being all together, each memory is broken up after key events in the series. After Seattle Day 1, you're shown Space Camp, you're given a guitar string memory after Jesse shows up, a flashback where Ellie finds out the truth about Joel's choice from the first game after killing Nora, and a future event that's to come in the show gives you the porch scene with Ellie and Joel. While I think the standalone episode might be my favorite of the season, I can't help but feel it changes what you're thinking throughout Ellie's quest. Because we know close to nothing about Abby in the game, we the audience are also motivated on this quest for vengeance to get payback for something that feels out of nowhere. Then each section being broken up with scenes with Joel feels like a little treat for continuing, almost like the game is aware of its brutality, so it reminds you why Ellie is furious because of what was taken from her. By breadcrumbing these, it makes Joel's death loom throughout the entirety of the runtime. On top of this, because of the structure in the game, you're left thinking Joel and Ellie ended on bad terms after Nora's death until the end of the game. Honestly, this change in the show made me question if I dislike this choice in the game. And part of that is because it is inherently a deception, but done in a way that I find complementary to the narrative in the game. Here in the show, we're given all of it at once in one episode, and once you're done, there is less of this rage that Ellie needed to have said one last thing to Joel. We're shown that they reached a resolution in the show, which makes Ellie's choice to keep pursuing Abby in a tsunami a little weirder. On top of this, and I will say one more time, this is an episode I really enjoyed. The little Joel section is incredible, but there are some odd choices that make Joel feel like a bad guy? This is where many people might disagree because I'm aware there is a little disconnect with some people on Joel, a murderer of hundreds of people, a dozen of which were innocent hospital workers. But there is still this idea that you may disagree with him, but he made the choice he thought was best in the first game. I feel like that is altered in the show and in turn makes the motivation to get revenge for Joel a little harder to get behind. For one, Eugene dies from a stroke in the game. I think having Joel kill him is probably in line with his character, but he straight up lies to Ellie, which I get, it's a callback to the first game's ending. I just have a hard time believing he would need to lie twice here. On top of that, when Joel reveals the truth of what happened in the first game, he makes it seem like the cure was 100% foolproof, which confused me because as a game player, it comes across as it has a good chance of working, muddling if killing someone on a less than certainty chance is the right thing to do. But then, the creator of the game confirmed, no, the cure would have worked. Again, I feel like this is removing complexity from the decision completely. It is to this end I feel like the show is already trying to get you on the side of Abby for the third season, whereas in the game it felt like such a gut punch to have to play as someone you viewed as an enemy for the entire runtime as Ellie. I just feel like this is a fundamental misunderstanding of what made the game so compelling in the first place, mostly because of the structure, and I don't think the game is perfect. But the second season troubled me so much because I don't think they did any favors to Bella Ramsey's portrayal of Ellie. And on top of that, I don't think they made a good pitch for why I should care about Abby's season in 2 years. But all the side characters are somehow cooking with Crisco in a way that isn't really helpful to its core 2 characters in the second game. And I'm only complaining because this is a show with great bones that somehow threw those bones in a blender. And nobody wants a bone smoothie. I don't really know a good way to end this video now, especially since, as Gathering Clips, YouTube recommended me every video about The Last of Us Season 2 that, maybe they're a little bit similar. Anyway, if you like this video, make sure to comment something nice, like, hey, that was a great Max Keeble's Big Move reference, bro. Your references are out of control. Everybody knows that. Later, haters.
This is the story of a girl.